This was in the fall of 2017, and even after all these years, the memory still sits in my chest like a weight. I was 32, camping with my friend Aaron deep in the forests of northern Wisconsin. We were looking for somewhere that felt cut off, the kind of place where your own voice seems too loud, where you notice the absence of traffic and seeing planes in the sky. Hours of gravel and dirt roads brought us to a narrow track, almost swallowed by grass, that curved into a clearing. An abandoned fire watchtower stood at the center, rust streaking its steel legs, the narrow staircase winding upward into a small, weather-beaten cab with panes of glass missing. The wind moved through it with a faint, hollow moan. The surrounding area in particular had stopped using these towers just recently, only years earlier, and this one hadn't been touched since. We set camp at the tree line, far enough from the tower that it didn't loom over us, but close enough to keep it in sight. The air was sharp with early autumn cold, carrying the scent of pine and damp leaves. The day was spent hiking narrow trails that twisted through pine stands and ridges, the forest floor a patchwork of fallen needles and brittle leaves. The trail eventually brought us to a ridge above a still, dark lake. We stayed there for a while, fishing without much luck, before deciding to head back. The quickest way back to camp cut through the clearing. As the trail opened, the change in the air was immediate. Quieter, heavier. At the far edge of the grass, near the tree line, something sat in the fading light. It was relatively large, broad through the shoulders, with tall, upright ears. The fur looked rough and uneven, catching the last thin strips of sun. Even at that distance, the scale was wrong for a dog. I thought maybe it could be a wolf, but its behavior wasn't right. We kept moving, although more cautious now than before. Our packs were heavy and clanging with gear, but that didn't seem to faze it. I kept an eye on this strange, dog-like creature until we got a bit further down the trail. About halfway across the clearing, I decided to glance behind us again. The thing we saw was now in a new position, a bit closer, and just off the trail. But now it was standing, not on all fours like a dog or wolf, but upright, balanced on two legs. It was completely motionless. Its head remained locked in our direction. I whispered to Aaron that we needed to move faster. No sudden movements. My stomach sank like a stone. The open stretch between us and the tower felt like our only way out. I didn't look back again until the stairs groaned and rattled beneath our weight, each step cutting through the stillness like a crack of glass. We finally made it up to the cab, our lungs heaving as we caught our breath. I wouldn't call it safety, but we felt less vulnerable being off the ground. The air inside the cab was stale, tinged with a faint metallic taste. Through a jagged gap where the glass had long since vanished, I scanned the clearing. Nothing moved. The spot where it had stood was empty. I strained to hear anything, but the tree line was unnervingly still. Then I thought to myself, if it could close the distance without a sound, it could just as easily be somewhere out of sight, already moving again. Night darkened quickly. The clearing blurred into a flat, black shape beneath us. Every sound stood out. The whine of wind through broken panes, the occasional rattle of loose metal. But beneath it all was a quiet, that felt intentional. We found ourselves checking the ground again and again, scanning the grass from up above, the path, the edges of the forest. The stillness felt like a held breath. The hours dragged by, each one heavier than the last. Cold seeped into my bones until my breath hung in the moonlight, like faint smoke. The night felt endless, but adrenaline and a constant edge of awareness kept us sharp, mostly. At some point, slumped upright against the tower's wall, I must have slipped into a shallow, uneasy sleep. I woke to a sharp, jarring sound from the woods, like an unnatural crack of laughter. For a moment, I thought it was just my mind, frayed and playing tricks, but Aaron's muttered curses as he jolted awake too told me it was real. Maybe those sounds belonged to the ordinary life of the forest, but after what we'd seen, there was nothing ordinary or soothing about them. Every possibility my mind conjured only fed the unease already rooted in my chest. When the horizon finally began to pale, the relief was dull and slow. The field came back into view, soft and muted under the early light. No tracks, no shapes, just the open grass, the motionless trees, and the shadow of the tower stretching long across the clearing. After much debate, we climbed down in silence, packed up our camp in a rush, and booked it. We didn't look back until we were out of those woods. The part that stays with me isn't the moment it vanished from sight. It's the night that followed, the hours of knowing it could have been anywhere, and we would have never known until it wanted us to.